I'm Tara from livingonadime.com.
And I'm Mike.
And I'm Jill.
So as you can tell, mother-in-law, son-in-law there, that's why he was tired of hearing his mother-in-law droning on.
Well, we had to back up some stuff off the computer, and I said, it's tough on a guy to have to listen to his mother-in-law continue to go on until the computer runs out of space. And then to back it up and start all over again.
That's a rough life. What do you say?
Then he has to back it up and start all over again.
Oh, that's good. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yes. So we were talking about Mom's story, her 500 ways I lived on $500 a month. Penny Pension Mama. She really did, she really did pinch every single penny until it was begging for mercy. And then some. So when we left off our last video, Mom was talking about the miracle of how even before she knew she was leaving my dad permanently, they had separated, and she'd gone shopping with my grandmother, who never goes shopping. We aren't a family that shops together. Mom and I don't go shopping together. We don't go get our nails done. We don't get pedicures. We paint a room. And so she was talking about how, you were provided those boots even before you knew you were going to need the boots. We lived in the city. We didn't even need boots.
And they weren't in style.
Yeah, but you found them for a really good deal. And then we ended up moving into the middle of no man's land, out into the country, into this little house right here. We moved into this little house that was my great-grandparents' house.
Little house on the prairie.
Yeah, our little house on the prairie that my great-grandparents had for missionaries. And you can see here, there's nothing. I know I keep reiterating this, but even Michael, until he went back there, he could not fully grasp how there's nothing out there.
Well, didn't the early settlers in this part of the Midwest call it the Great American Desert?
Yes, they did. And the grandparents, so my great-grandparents here that owned this house here, this was not the house that they did it in. This is another house. But the people that did this, my great-grandparents literally homesteaded that part of the country in Southeastern Colorado. It was one of the last parts of the country to be developed. That's how nothing there is out there.
And it was the part that was caught up in the Dust Bowl.
Yeah, and so my great-grandparents literally homesteaded that area. I remember
Grandma telling about how they would go in and get water in the summer. They'd have to go how many miles to a creek.
I can't remember if it was like 1 to 2 miles, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. They'd take the wagon in with barrels of water to get water from the creek and bring them back to the house. And she said she longed for a cold glass of water. She missed that more than anything, to have a cold, because by the time it got back to the house, it was hot. It wasn't cold anymore.
Yeah.
So homestead. It was pure homesteading.
Yeah, it really was homesteading. And we're not talking like my great-great-great. This is just my great-grandmother, not that many generations ago. In early 1900s, they homesteaded.
Yeah.
Out in southeastern Colorado. And so then, 70 years later, we move out there to be by my grandparents and my dad's side of the family, even though we didn't really get along with them very well, and they were being helpful, but
at that time it was like night and day. That was another amazing thing, because I expected the worst. I wasn't prepared for them, and they were so caring and so loving and so supportive. Yeah. I forgot to even mention that part. It was just unbelievable. They made us feel so welcome. Anytime they did anything, they would take us with them. They made sure we were included in everything. They just bent over backwards to be nice to us. It was unbelievable. I felt it was really one of the best times for me. As a matter of fact, it was I look back on it, was kind of a time of healing, for me a little bit, because it was so peaceful out there in the country, because there was nothing to do.
Yeah, it's funny because it really, even though we talked about in the last video about how the coyotes would howl all night long, it actually was very peaceful out there.
Peaceful, yeah.
I don't know what it is about that's out there, but I guess because you don't have the highway and you don't have everything going, you can't go to the store to just shop. Nothing was open on Sunday.
Yeah, it was a calmer way of life, you know. We just didn't have anything to do. We had no entertainment, so we just kind of visited with each other, and
which is actually more relaxing than having entertainment constantly plugged in.
Yeah. And so it was really a nice time.
Yeah.
But when we quit last, I was talking about jobs, you know, and I did tractor. I took any job I could get, and the one was the plowing. Well, this plowing of this tractor, the cab was air conditioned. It was supposed to be air conditioned, but the air conditioner wouldn't work when I drove it. So I had these two little tiny windows that blew hot air between. We're talking July, 100+ degree weather, and I'm plowing up dirt.
And there's dust
no trees
everywhere.
No trees anywhere.
No trees, dust, the wind's blowing through these little windows with dirt, and I'm sweating, and the dirt is blowing in cake. Now the positive thing was I got a beautiful facial at the end of every day because I had this mud mask on when I'd get done. So there was a positive to this, doing this.
Because that's one thing that we haven't mentioned about this whole thing, is the wind never stops blowing out there. I mean, it never stops blowing out there. You maybe get 10 days a year where the wind's not blowing, maybe, and it is just blowing.
That's why it was the Dust Bowl. It was literally, that's why that area was the Dust Bowl.
It just blows dust, wind all the time.
So I did that job for, it was either a week or 2 weeks, and I got minimum wage.
Which was like $2.50 an hour back then.
It was $3.50.
$3.50 an hour.
Yeah. So I got minimum wage, and I try to be patient. I really do with people now who are getting minimum wage because they're working in a restaurant slinging hamburgers or doing something like that, and they holler, "Well, I'm only getting minimum wage, but it's air conditioned." You know, they're working in an air conditioned room, and I think of that job every time I hear somebody hollering about, you know, they only are getting minimum wage for some of these jobs that were really nice.
Minimum wage, okay, this is a whole nother thing, but minimum wage is supposed to be a transition job, not a life job.
Yeah, that's true.
You're working minimum wage. This is a bunch of baloney, getting all these people, oh, we have to mandate $15 an hour for a livable minimum wage. That's ridiculous. Minimum wage is teenage jobs or getting by jobs just to get you by until you can get something better.
Yeah.
And people don't grasp that nowadays, that's what that's supposed to be. So.
But I tried a lot of different things, and I let everybody know, and as soon as I got done with the tractor job, then a lady came and asked me if I did alterations, which I did not do alterations, but I said, yes, I do
Alterations? Like on sewing?
Mending clothes.
Yeah, mending clothes.
Fixing clothes. And that's another one of those things I was talking about, teaching your kids life skills. Because my mom taught me how to sew. I didn't like to sew. I don't hate it, but I just don't enjoy it that much. But it saved me back then because I got a job that I earned money with that skill. And it saved us wear and tear on our clothes. I didn't have to buy clothes because I would mend all of our stuff. So it was like a double, thing on that.
Man, you could make thousands and thousands of dollars if you just make aprons.
Aprons?
No. Everybody loves all the aprons you've made me.
Start doing aprons, don't I? But so, you've got to do the life skills. So the next job I did was, the lady came to me and she said, and I want you to not get this, I want you to always try for these things. She said, okay, there's a job opening at the school, in the school cafeteria. It's only 2 days a week at the most. It was just substituting in the cafeteria. She said, but every mom in town is going to want that job because it was the school hours. Then she said, you're not from here. You're a stranger. I wasn't in small towns, that's the way it works. So they're going to hire somebody out. So this lady did not give me one encouragement at all. So I could sit there and say, okay, why am I even bothering to apply here? They're not going to pick me. I've never worked in a school cafeteria. All these other people, they're going to get somebody, and do the whole gamut through my mind, run through all the reasons why not to do it. But instead I said, that's great, and I took off and I applied instantly at the school. I got the job. You know, if I had done what I wanted to do and just sit back and say, well, you know, they're not going to hire me and they're not going to do it.
Because people don't understand, in small towns, if you're not from there, I mean, we had the advantage that our family had lived there for the past 100 years, 80 years. Yeah, 80 years or so. So our family was from there. So we were a little bit in, but we still weren't from there. And if you're not from there, they don't have anything to do with you. So
sometimes,
go ahead, Mike. Shows that because people say, oh, you can't do that, or there's going to be this challenge or that challenge, you don't really know what the challenge is until you've actually tried it.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
And a lot of times those are just discouraging things that are there to keep you from actually succeeding.
Yeah, you can't allow discouragement in these situations. You can't allow discouragement to even be in your vocabulary or to even think about it. You know, you just need to go ahead and do. So I got the job, but it still wasn't much. And so finally, it was getting close to Christmas. Winter, I was having to pay a good sized gas bill at this point because that house was not really insulated a whole lot. It wasn't bad, but, you know, it really wasn't insulated or anything. So I had a high gas bill, and things were starting to get really, really tight. Only working 1 to 2 days at the school wasn't really enough to make a whole lot of money.
And so this house was built out of stone. And you can see here on the chicken coop, see on the right, I think the right side, see all the stone? They would build houses out there out of stone because there was no wood. And they didn't have any wood to build anything. Well, this house, here's the house that we lived in. And the walls
were like, about 12 to 15 inches deep.
They were super thick because they were like 12 to 15 inches. But it had these really big windows. Can you see those big windows, which were great because it was the brightest house I've ever lived in.
It was. It
had so much sunlight. It was great. I love that house. But because it had these old big windows, it didn't keep the air, or it didn't keep the heat in very well. So.
As a matter of fact, it was so bad that I would take hamburger out that morning to thaw for dinner to fry, and come supper time, it wasn't thawed. And I didn't have, of course, any way to thaw it really, you know, or anything. I mean,
we didn't have a microwave.
No, so what I did was I would 2 days before I'd have to do hamburger, I'd put it in the refrigerator because it would thaw faster in the refrigerator than it did in the house. But I kept the heat totally almost off when you guys were in school, so I could have it warm for when you came home, you know, a little bit warmer. So so it was rough. But so my grandmother-in-law pulled me to one side at this point. It's almost Christmas. She said, "You need help. You've got to go in." And she said, we have been paying our taxes, this family has, for years and years and years. And nobody's ever used any government supplements or anything. So she said, you need to go in and see if you can get a little bit of welfare to help you, which I did not want to do. But I broke down and I said, okay. So I went in. It was really funny, though, because I got welfare for only about 4, maybe 5 months. It wasn't very long. I didn't have, and I only agreed to it because they were supposed to get money from Dad. They were going to go get the money from Dad because he wasn't really supporting us at all.
You didn't get any child support or anything.
No, and so they were going to get money from him, and that would cover the welfare, which I didn't feel so bad about then, you know, that he would be at least paying for that much. Well, and I'll get further in other episodes into this, but I had such bizarre things happen later on, and later down the line, of weird things happening. I ended up having to pay back at one point all that money that I had used from welfare. It was really a bizarre situation. So I really didn't, even though I went on welfare, I didn't really get it. I had to pay for it later on.
Yeah.
So I did that. And, I was going to tell you too, we were talking about the chickens and doing the cowboy boots with the mud. We had more things go on when we lived there, like weird stuff. different stuff. Well, once we had all the mud, and we'd have to push the car out. We'd get stuck in the mud. That driveway stayed muddy all the time.
We were always sliding off the road into the ditch because it was so muddy.
I know. I forgot about that till David mentioned it. We'd drive into town. We'd slide off into the ditch, have to push it out of the ditch and stuff. But it would get stuck in the driveway before we even left home. And so this one day, I came up with this brilliant idea. I figured out if we stood at the front of the car and pushed, or the back of the car and pushed, we'd get covered in mud because the wheels would spin. So I said, what we'll do is we'll open up the car doors and push on the frame where the car door was. And I had Tara get in. I can't believe I let you do this.
I was 10.
She was 10. Get in there and push on the gas. She was going to do the steering and the pushing on the gas.
Because see, my mom's dad was really into cars and stuff, so we learned to drive. I was probably 7 the first time I got in a car to drive.
Oh, yeah.
And so by the time I was 10, I knew how to drive pretty much. I mean, I wouldn't go down the street, but I probably could have if I needed to. And so Grandpa just made sure we all knew how to drive and drove stick shifts, right away as soon as we could touch the pedals.
So I put you in the car to push on the gas and steer, and David and I were each on the frame. And we were trying to push that silly car out. And I said, give it gas now. And you pushed on that gas, and the wheels went spinning like a top. Covered everything. It flew inside the car, so the whole inside of the car was full of mud. I was covered with mud from head to toe. We were hurrying, trying to go someplace. And so we just had one thing after another like this continually. So then one night there was the monsters. The monster. I mean, okay, this was the craziest thing. We'd gone into town and we came back, and we weren't going to be in there very long because usually I left an outside porch light on, and I didn't think I didn't do it this time. So it was dark, and if anybody's ever lived in the country,
and dark,
and it's overcast, no stars, no moon. It is so black you can't even see a foot or two in front of you. I mean, you just can't see. It's coal black.
Yep.
And so we pull up to the house in this darkness, and I turn off the car, and we heard this sound, and it went, isn't that just the way it went? I mean, it's horrible. It was like vibrating off the prairie, it was
it was kind of like, we kind of thought it was maybe an earthquake or something, but we knew there wasn't earthquakes out there. It was weird.
It surrounded us. The sound surrounded us. Okay, and I look back, I thought, you've seen in these horror movies where the gal walks into the house and she's got her keys in her hands and her purse, and she steps to the door and there's a monster or somebody in the house. So instead of running back out the door, getting in the car and leaving, or running to a neighbor's, what does she do? She runs upstairs and locks herself or shuts herself in the bedroom with no lock on it. And I thought, what was I thinking? Because that night, instead of me backing out and leaving, which any normal person...
Because we were in the car and we heard this as soon as we opened the door,
Yeah, we could hear it. Instead of just backing out, I said, okay, Mom's going to run and open the door, and you run after me and go get in there. I'm thinking, what a dumb blonde moment. I mean, it was like...
Oh, you set him up for that.
I could see his face light up. He just can't wait to say something mean and cruel to his mother-in-law with that one. But it was so... I looked back, I thought, what a dumb thing to do. You see those horror movies and think, why did they do that? Well... I did it in real life, so I guess people actually do those dumb things. But anyway, so I ran in and locked the door and everything, and I called...
you had David and I. You said, go now, crouch down and see if you can look out the windows. And I remember I was in the kitchen looking out like this, and David was in the living room, and we were trying to figure out, and we crawled on the floor to the other bedroom, and we were looking out, trying to figure out what this noise was.
Yeah, because I ran in and I got the telephone then, and I was going to call Grandpa, my father-in-law, to tell him I thought he better come out there because, as soon as he picked up the phone, he could hear the noise. It was so loud, he could just hear the
and just reverberated off of everything.
Yeah.
And there was nothing there in the prairie, but we did have a house next door to us that was unoccupied for a while. and it just reverberated off of just the few
like
buildings that were
echoing.
there. Yeah.
Really, it was really weird. You can't even describe the sound. It just doesn't. We are not doing it justice. It was so scary. And so he heard it. He said, "Hang up the phone. Don't go outside." Well, yeah, right. He said, "I'll be right there." So we could see. I had us all watching out the windows, and we could see anybody coming from town down the road. We could see them coming, into. To our house.
Because it was a 2-mile road, and we could see the whole 2 miles.
All the way to town on that 2 miles, because there's nothing, in the way of our view. It was just grass. And so I was watching. I don't think it was even hardly 5 minutes, and I saw a pickup coming down the road, and here comes Grandpa, and then here comes another pickup, and another pickup, and all these pickups started driving
up. This whole train of cars, lights.
And these guys were in the back. They stopped, and all these men were in the back in the cabs of these pickup, and they had shotguns, and they had these rifles, and they're jumping out. It was like something out of Walker, Texas Ranger.
We're going to get us a monster today.
And they all got their guns and their flashlights.
It sounded horrible. I mean, I wish we could have recorded it because, I mean, you literally thought you were just getting ready to be eaten up by some sort of dragon or something.
Yeah.
It was
even on TV or a movie, I've never heard a sound like this. It was so creepy. It just gave me chills. It was scary. And at first I felt kind of dumb, for me. Yeah. I wasn't the type to panic, so I felt kind of, silly, but I could tell these guys were scared. Because they could hear it. And they all spread out like you see on a crime show where they're looking for a body. They spread out across the prairie that, on the other side of the chicken coop where that was.
Yeah, so see, here's our chicken coop that we had. And so they were all lined up.
And walked across the prairie, lined up.
But it was dark, pitch black.
But it was pitch black.
It was black. Yeah. It was
no moon that night, of course, nothing.
They couldn't see anything, and they had their rifles and they were gone probably about 10, 15 minutes. It seemed like it was a while.
It was a long time.
Yeah, it was a really long time. We kept hearing it, and I didn't know what was happening. And pretty soon they all come walking back in, and Grandpa was laughing, and the guys were, I think it was like hysterical laughter you feel after you've been so scared to death that, you just start laughing. And they were all laughing. And Grandpa comes up, he said, "Well, yeah," he said, what it was, they had a gas pipe coming out of the field that they capped off, and that cap had broke loose, and so when the pressure would build up, the cap would pop up, and the pressure coming out would make this horrendous sound. Then it would flop back down, and then it would come up again and make the sound again, and that's all it was. Yeah. And so here they had all their rifles, but I was surprised none of them had ever heard that for something like this before, it really was. Yeah. But so that was our monster on the prairie.
Imagine if they shot at it, there'd been a big fireball.
I know. And I'm surprised somebody didn't.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised they didn't actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They probably couldn't see it at first. They could just hear it. So I'm really shocked that they didn't go ahead and shoot and then think about it later. But so that was the talk of the town for a while, our big old monster out in the prairie. So we didn't have to have a movie or anything for entertainment. We just woke up each morning and something else was happening for that day. It was just a snake on the step or the monsters at night or something. So we had something all.
Well, and then in the winter, we lived back there, and it was one of the hardest winters that they had had. And just to put it in perspective, so here's our chicken coop again. The snow drifts. The wind blows so bad over there.
There's nothing to stop the snow.
Yeah, there's nothing to stop the snow. There's no trees, nothing. And so the wind just blows the snow and just blows it and it drifts. So when it comes up against something like the chicken coop, it builds up. Well, my brother and I, this chicken coop is probably 6 or 7 feet tall. Probably 6.5 feet tall or so, because David now could stand up in it. But it drifted, and we had 6 to 6.5 foot snow drifts, and David and I would play on top of the snow drifts because I remember seeing the roof of the chicken coop, and I remember Mom's gonna love this. I remember one time my brother and I debating if we should walk on the roof of the chicken
I was
coop.
going to say, I hope you didn't walk. Oh, I would have known if you'd walked.
And you can
on
see
it.
the condition. This picture was taken a little bit later, but you can see the condition. It hadn't really changed. And so, yeah, that probably wasn't the smartest idea, so we didn't. Thankfully, we had enough brains to not walk on the top of the chicken coop. But yeah, I mean, and we would walk and we'd fall down in this 6-foot snowdrift and get stuck, and we thought this was a great adventure, thinking now I'd love them now let my kids do that. They could get buried in snow. But yeah, I mean, it was always something out there.
Yeah,
but
we had something continually, and so we were doing pretty good after I went on the welfare for a little bit. You know, that helped me catch my breath. But then they asked me, I was still working at the school twice a week, and they asked me to I was going back to jobs is what I was thinking. I hope it didn't confuse everybody there, but I went back to my jobs. They asked me it was getting towards the end of the school year, and they asked me to work full time the next year. And I was beyond excited because, you know, it was really good wages, and I had medical benefits because up until I went on the welfare, we didn't have any medical really or anything. I didn't have any medical anyway or anything. And so I loved our little house. I just loved it. And even in spite of all the things that we're talking about, it was really fun being there.
Yeah.
And Dad came to visit us every once in a while. He'd come back, you know, to see us and everything. So he came back, and at that point, you guys were missing him. And David was writing these letters that just broke your heart because you've got to understand, it's hard on any kids when their parents divorce. You know, it really is hard. And so I don't want to minimize what anybody else, but you guys were a little bit different. It kind of helped, and it had a negative to it. He worked at home. Dad worked at home. So not only did they have me all the time, but they had him all the time. And so now all of a sudden, they don't have him anymore, and so they missed him a lot more than a lot of kids do because he was with them all the time, you know, 24/7 he was with them. So they really, really missed him. So that was kind of the negative part. The positive part was because he was home with us all the time. I know that I'm not saying that everybody needs to do this because it's not even practical nowadays, but him being at home, working at home was probably one of the best things that ever happened for the kids, you know, for us as a family, because there's a security in that, knowing Dad's there all the time. If you think about like in the 1800s or whatever, they would have a store or shop, but they always lived above. So Dad worked down below. Dad was always there. They would live on the farm. Dad was always out in a field or close by. Having Dad there, it's like me. I was thinking the other day, it's like me with God. I know, even though I maybe not doing anything right now that I need God instantly to help me, I know in a heartbeat I could just ask God and He'd be there. If something happens, I can say, help me. You know, I need this. And He's just there. I know I have a security. If you think about in your mind, you take God's not there and you have to call Him up and wait for Him to drive to come help you, you know, if you can imagine that would be, it's so different. So the kids didn't have that. They had Dad there, and I think it's the same type of security they felt with having, you know, their dad home all the time. There was a nice security. So they grew up having an extra amount of love and, you know, comfort, and it gave you confidence too because you felt so secure. Am I wrong in saying that?
Yep.
You're the daughter.
Yeah.
You know, they had more confidence and they weren't as frightened of anything. You know, they felt more secure that they could do stuff. And so it was hard on them when they were separated from him. It used to be the mom would always get the kids because the kids were used to mom being at home. It's not that way so much now, but then it was because Dad was always gone. So it was really rough. So, but I wasn't going to go back, you know. We were just going to adapt. But my husband came back. It was breaking his heart because he missed the kids too. He missed them so much, and the kids missed him. And so he told me one time when he came back right before school was out, he said, would you consider moving back? And I thought, no way. I mean, I had everything. I had healed. It was like I said before, I was in this bubble. It was so peaceful and so wonderful. I'd healed emotionally. I mean, it was relaxing. I had the job of my dreams now. It couldn't have been a more perfect job. I had a place to stay. And there was just no reason for me to go back.
Yeah.
And he said, well, just think about it. You know, he wasn't putting any pressure on me or anything. He said, just think about it. The kids probably put more pressure than what he did on me. But especially David missed him. And so I said, all right, I'll pray about it. But I'm thinking, there's no way I'm going to, go back. And it was one of those things again. I just need to learn not to pray because it gets me in trouble all the time. Actually, not really. But, I started praying. And I remember it so well because I thought, no, I've got to go back. I didn't want to go back. It was like God said, you need to go back. But it was interesting this time because before God said, I'm going to take care of everything. Don't worry about anything. And this time, it wasn't that he wasn't going to take care of everything, but it was really strange because it's like he said, it's going to be hard. I'm asking you to go back, but it's going to be really, really hard. And he instilled in me that it was going to probably be the hardest thing I'd ever gone through in my life. And I'd already thought I'd gone through a few little things anyway, but I opened up my Bible. I was praying like this for several days. I'd open up my Bible and it was like God warning the Israelites, that this is going to happen. This is going to be hard. This is, these types of things. That's all I kept reading in the scripture. And he forewarned me. He said, and it was almost like he gave me a choice. He said, this is what I want you to do, but because it's going to be so very bad, I will give you option that you don't have to.
Oh, thanks a lot.
What?
So we went through all that and we could have just stayed in cushy
Springfield. But he said, my true will is to have you go back there. I have reasons.
Yes.
And so I talked to my husband and I told him what was going on. And I said, I don't know what to do. And he said, I don't want to push you one way or the other. But he said, I know every time you've ever prayed in your life and you felt God was telling you something, that you do know he was telling you. You understood that.
Yeah.
And it worked out for the best eventually. But he said, it's whatever you want. So I said, okay, we'll go back.
Because you didn't know then that you'd be talking to millions and millions of people across the world, telling them your story.
I mean, if I chose another direction, either way, by not going to Springfield or by not going back at this time, everything would have changed.
Yeah, we probably would not have had this business.
Oh, no.
We wouldn't have Living on a Dime if we wouldn't have done all of that. I'm sure of it. Yeah.
No, we would not have had this. Everything in our life would have been totally different. And so I said, all right. And I know a lot of people are thinking, listening to these past couple of episodes, oh, it was so wonderful. Your in-laws provided the house. Well, I don't have anybody to provide a house for me. You got all your utilities. Well, I don't have anybody to help me out with my utilities or anything. You just had it so easy then. They brought you groceries. From this point on, it was like night and day.
Mm-hmm.
Everything completely changed and went to the whole other way. The day we got my folks flipped out. My husband's folks just became livid. I thought, I'm the only woman who's actually trying to make her kids be close to their father. Usually they're wanting them not to be near the father, and I'm wanting them to be close to their father, and everybody's getting mad at me for wanting them to be close to the dad. And it wasn't because he was abusive to you or anything like that. I could see that. But they got mad. They were so mad that the day we got ready to load our stuff up, nobody showed up. There wasn't one person come to help us. And we were halfway done. It was just Dad. We had pianos and couches, all these heavy stuff we were trying to load up. Just
because
the two of us.
Mom and Dad made player pianos for their business before she left, and we had brought a piano out because David and I were taking piano lessons. And
Yeah,
that
so
was
we brought one of the
things,
smaller
yeah.
pianos, but we still had all this heavy stuff.
Was that the little piano Mike and I have now? Was it
It
the
is.
same one?
It's
Oh,
the-
really? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
It's the same one.
I thought it was, but I couldn't remember.
Yeah, and so nobody showed up, and finally, partway into the day, my best friend, her and her husband came driving up, and she said, "We didn't come because we thought you'd have all this help." And there was nobody there. And so they packed us up, and they felt so bad. They said, "Well, we're going to drive you all the way to Wichita." I mean, they just come over to help us load. And so they hadn't planned on going back with us to Wichita. I mean, they just had come over to help us load things up, and they said, we were leaving that afternoon. And they said, we'll drive back with you. We're not going to leave you to deal with all this when you get to Wichita and
Because we
everything.
had no friends in Wichita.
No, at this point
We
we
had
lost
nobody. Our
we'd
church.
everybody. And
Sorry.
I was gonna get into that a little bit later
Well,
about how
and-
people
Yeah, just briefly.
we had
Sorry. So because of things Dad had done, our church had kicked us out and didn't want anything to do with us. So we had no one in Wichita.
yeah
It's getting me all choked up.
actually they didn't. They just turned. They totally. We still
Yeah.
went, but they turned their backs on us.
Yeah.
Nobody would have anything. We weren't Amish, but we were pretty much shunned. Is
Yeah.
what it was. And so they took us and drove the 6 hours with us. I mean, I'm thinking, what wonderful friends drove us all the way to Wichita, and we arrived there, and it was so bad. My husband, in the year that we'd been gone, had bought all this furniture, a ton of furniture, new appliances, and I'm bringing appliances back. So he had a house full of furniture. I'm bringing a house full of furniture back. But he had...
My grandpa, just so you know, so my dad's family is hoarders. His dad's side of the family is hoarders. And I mean, we are the stuff that makes extreme hoarders look like they're clean. That's the way my grandfather was, you know. Yeah, so my dad came from a hoarding family, and
he'd kept it under control somewhat.
Because you were there to keep it under control.
Yeah, while we were together. But when I left in a year's time, you can't even imagine. To get into the back door, we had to turn sideways to try to slide along to get into the kitchen because there was stuff just stacked on the back porch there. And so we had all this stuff. And then a friend of his had just gotten a divorce, and he had a whole household of furniture, and he had no place to store it. So he had said, well, you can store it at my place. So we've got these two, besides the hoarding, these two households of furniture, and I'm arriving with another household of furniture. His office alone, when you walked into it, he had opened no mail up. Now, he was supposed to be running the business, if you can imagine. He opened no mail up, and except for the letters from the kids and I, that was the only mail he opened up, and he had brown paper sacks. Oh, it was probably about waist high in his office right there when you off the kitchen. Waist high full of mail alone. Just tons of mail, because we had a business and personal mail, so we had a bunch of mail. He got a lot of, and paperwork. All the paperwork were in these brown paper sacks. So he hadn't done taxes, he hadn't done anything. All the paperwork.
And pay any bills, yeah.
And you couldn't even hardly get into the kitchen. I mean, there was just pathways to kind of walk through everything. My girlfriend, when her and her husband pulled into the driveway and went into the house, they had to turn around right away and drive right back again because they hadn't planned on making this trip. And they had kids at home and stuff like that, so they had to turn and get right back. And I remember hugging her goodbye, and she's clinging to me, sobbing and crying. She said, I can't leave you in this. I just can't leave you here. She said, there's no way you can stay here. She said, I can't leave you. And she just sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. And I said, I'll be fine. And she took off. And that is the beginning of the end, kind of. So
Well, when you said you had to drive back, it was like 6 hours back there?
6 hours back, yeah.
Yeah, it
So
was a 6-hour drive. And they had a farm.
They had
So
a
they
farm.
had cows, and I think they had sheep. Did they have sheep and cows? I can't remember.
I can't remember.
I know they had cows for sure, but they had like this farm, and so they couldn't just leave. People don't understand, when you live on a farm, you can't just leave the farm. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't do that because you have things you have to milk, and you have.
So what they did for us is amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell one last story, I think, right here real quick, if you don't mind, and then it'll be done. We'll be done for this session. But it reminded me of the Olympians, the American and the New Zealander that were running the 5,000 meter. Did you hear about it, Michael? I don't know if you heard about
I
it.
did.
Yeah.
And they fell. They tripped each other up and they fell. And the American leaned over the New Zealander. Well, by this time, everybody's gone past him, but the American's leaning over the New Zealander who's laying on the ground, and she said, "Get up." The American told her, she said, "Get up. We're going to finish. We've got to finish. You get up." And she helped the New Zealander get up. And they started running again. And the American found out just a few steps in that she'd busted her knee up worse than she'd realized. And the New Zealander kept running, and she saw the American, and she came back to help the American then this time. And the American said, "Go on, we're going to finish. We've got to finish." And they both just kind of barely made it past the finish line. And I'm not going to tear up here, but, you know, we've got to realize two things here. She came alongside the New Zealander and said, "You get up. We're going to do this together." And we have got to do that with each other as Christians, as neighbors. My neighbors are the ones that's going to dig me out of the rubble when there's a tornado. And I'm going to dig them out. And instead of spending hours on your cell phone, not talking or speaking to anybody, you speak to that cashier at the grocery store and say, "Hi, how's your day?" or something. Just start out with hi. If you can't do anything, speak to your neighbor and wave to them.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones that's going to come alongside you. And we don't do that anymore. Nobody coming alongside. And that was the most amazing thing I think I saw in the Olympics. And they said, "We're going to finish." Right now we're running a race. And half the time I'm splatted on the ground like the New Zealander was. Or I'm limping like the American. This is my life. It has been my life for years. The main thing is you don't give up. You just keep going. Make it to the finish line. I don't care if you're not winning the race. Most of us aren't winning the race. There's only a couple that's going to actually win the race. But you get up and you keep going. But the most amazing thing was when they got across that finish line, you should have seen the looks on their face. I have never seen such smiles and joy that the two of them had helped each other get across that finish line.
And they didn't even win.
And they didn't even win. That's what it's going to be like in heaven.
Yeah.
Do you realize that? When we get to heaven, we're going to meet all these people that came alongside of us, or people that we've helped, and the joy that we're going to see on those faces is going to be, and that moved me so much when I saw those two gals. You know, the American didn't keep going, thinking I'll just leave her splatted here. She said, she encouraged her. She said, "You can get up, we're going to finish." And all of us go through stuff all the time that we need to do this for each other, you know. And that's what those friends did. You know, they said, "We're going to be here for you." So, anyway, so next
and that's what people have to realize. We get emails every day, day. And I'm sorry, we cannot answer them all. I mean, I wish we could, and we try to answer as many as we can. But you may be the victim. And you may have all this stuff coming at you. But just try to figure out the next step to keep going. You know, I mean, I'll get a letter with, "I've lost my job. Now I just had a heart attack. My kids have left me. My husbands have left me. And I don't know what I'm going to do." Well, you may not know what you're going to do. Get up and do the dishes. You know, just do the next step that you can to keep yourself going.
And if you can't think of what that next step is, go do something for somebody else.
Exactly.
Go do something for somebody else. If you can't fix anything in your life, if your life is so broken, there's nothing to fix, you get up and you go help somebody else fix their life.
And if you're too sick to get off the couch to go physically help someone else, send someone an email. Make a phone call. If you have enough energy to email me.
Pray for them. Pray for them.
You know, and email someone and say, you know what, I'm praying for you today. Because there are people that are too sick to get into the couch, you get off the couch, and I totally get that, but it doesn't mean you can't do anything.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah.
All right, well, that was very inspiring.
Listen,
we're going to go to the finish line.
Hobbling across.
Yeah, we're going to be hobbling.
Let's see, between my brother's knee surgery and Michael's ankle surgery, your neuropathy, we're going
to be limping all the way, aren't we?
All the way.
But you know, I wish we had a picture. I didn't even think about getting a picture of those gals. Their faces were actually glowing.
Yeah.
And it just made me think of us in heaven, you know, with all the people we've helped, all the people that have helped us. It's just, we're going to greet one another, and it's just going to be unbelievable. So, anyway.
All right, well, if you want Mom's tips, Penny Pinching Mama, 500 ways I lived on $500 a month. These are the actual tips that she used in here. So it's things like, don't take a 30-minute shower. Don't even take a 5-minute shower. Take a 3-minute shower. Don't buy trash bags. Use the grocery sacks you get at the store. These are the true frugal tips that we used. And let me see if I can find the picture real quick. We even went so far as, oh dear, let's see. Can I find it real quick? I was going to show the costume, or that David and I did for our
bags on your head.
So let's see. So can you see that? So my brother and I took an old shear that we found in the dumpster from the office behind us, and we put a bread bag on top of our head. We both did. And we were king and queen for the day. So it's in the description below. Those are the tips that Mom used to survive on $500 a month. And we will be back in a few days with I have no idea what part we're on, but whatever part number we're on. With the next part, when Mom tries to start cleaning up this horrid hoarder's house that we came back to. I remember just
when she couldn't afford a gallon of gas in a match.
Exactly.
No, I couldn't afford a gallon of gas in a match.
That would have been a whole lot easier.
It would have. It really would have.
So anyway, so visit us. And, for all those people who say we haven't lived on a dime, we have lived on a dime. We have lived on a half a penny. And yes, we do know what we're talking about. So that's part of this story here, because people get a little snarky because Mike and I are middle class now. But,
not only did we live on a dime. What, Michael?
Well, even we weren't always, although we didn't go through what you went through.
Yeah.
But we also lived in ways other Americans would be appalled about.
But we still didn't declare bankruptcy.
Yeah.
We paid everything. So that's going to be in the next episode.
Yep.
So.
All right. Well, we will see you later, Mom. And everyone else, have a good day. And join us next time.
Everybody.